Okay, so as we continue looking at and reflecting on what it means to be a functional leader, what it means to be a leader who is able to respond to reality, the changing reality, our changing ability and availability of our team members, we're going to just quickly look at some identity stuff. Okay, if you can have a look, there's another one of these sessions that I've done for the youth team that is looking at the self-concept diagram. So if you can have a look at that first, that will help. I'm going to assume you've seen that as we go through this session. So we're looking at, so just to recap from the last session, first of all, we're looking at this dynamic that happens as the leader's contribution and the member's contribution changes, and how sometimes we can find ourselves with a gap if we're the leader, and sometimes we can find ourselves in a position of conflict with our team members as well. And so our job as leaders is to make sure that actually the reason for these has not to do with our stuff. Okay, so we just need to be aware of that. Okay, so we're going to look at the self-concept diagram by Dr. Hayakawa. You'll remember we have the real self with our deficits. Okay, our deficits, which are the things that we have missed out on, and then our bruises, okay, which are the things that have happened to us in the past. Okay, and this is our real self, remember? Yep, you can see that. This is our real self, and then we have our self-concept diagram. Sorry, self-concept even, self-concept, not, this is the whole thing is the self-concept diagram. And from here we say I, okay? Now, when we're talking about identity, actually what we're talking about is this part of us. Our self-esteem is how we feel about this. And this is our self-picture, okay? And our self-esteem is how we feel about that. And from there, remember we said, we look at an opportunity, we look at a circumstance, and we perceive it as a threat or opportunity. We see it as something positive or something that we can handle or not handle, depending on this. In other words, how we do life depends on this, usually. I'll just use another, I'll bring that in a bit later. Also impacting on this is our bruises and deficits also impact on that. You remember we have the other component of our self, which is our spirit. Okay, Romans 8 talks about how our spirit speaks and is connected to God's Spirit, and God's Spirit reminds us that we are children of God. Okay, so we do have a spirit that is connected to God, and through which we can also see the world. So we have two possible orientations. We can look at a circumstance from our self-concept and all the stuff that comes and impacts it, or we can look at it from our relationship with God, seeing and discerning what His view of what's going on is, okay? Now, when identity issues happen, so for example, that feeling of, I am the leader, and therefore, whatever it is, therefore, I am not going to pick up after you. I am the leader. You should be doing your job well. And so it's not my job to come after you and clear up your mess. It's not my job to fill in that gap that we were talking about. Okay, so those sorts of thoughts, those sorts of responses tend to come from this. And when this is under stress, okay, being challenged or just feeling stressed by life, it can become quite rigid, and that's where the identity starts to play in to our role, play into the decisions that we're making and the impact that we're having on other people. Okay, it can also this stuff just can stop us from this whole mechanism can just stop us from actually just seeing reality for what it is and seeing things through God's eyes. And so we can miss things. We can miss what is going on in front of our noses. And so as leaders, we talked about the whole process. Discipleship for me is about separating the precious from the worthless. There's a verse in Jeremiah, I think it's Jeremiah 15 verse 19, which says, if you separate the precious from the worthless, the vile from the precious, you will become my spokesperson. And what that's talking about is this whole process of discipleship and discernment, being able to discern between what is my stuff and my identity stuff that I'm reacting to or reacting from, and actually what is going on, what is God saying, what is the precious, okay? And being able to choose, obviously, the choice that we want is the precious. But if we haven't done the work to understand this stuff and discern it and differentiate between that and our spirit and God's spirit as he looks out and as he helps us see what's going on, then it can be very hard to do. Therefore, in leadership, actually being able to do this for ourselves, this journey of discipleship and separating the precious from the worthless, becomes really, really important for us to be, if we are to be effective as leaders. It also helps us see what the role is, what the job is, as we're leading others, as we're on our team helping others to also separate the precious from the worthless. Because when we're coming from this, often these come out in anxieties and fears, and they don't lead. Fear and anxiety does not lead to life. But if we can actually help each other tune in again to God's life, to his hope, to his vision, what he is seeing and what he is saying to us, then actually that can bring us to life. The other thing that it does as well is, do you remember the goal that we had up here? You remember that goal, we said, came from that place of prayer and connecting with God and seeing and discerning and praying about a particular situation. And so if we can in order to keep that goal fresh, we need to keep that connection fresh. We need to keep coming back to what God said and how he feels about the situation. If we slip into this stuff, then our agenda can take over. We can become hopeless, we can become fearful, anxious, we can become prideful, we can start doing things in our own strength, neither of which extremes are going to help us reach our goal to God's glory in the way he would intend us to do. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that's given you enough things just to think about. Love to have a chat if you're working through some of this stuff. And I hope it's helpful. Thanks.